This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Columbus lost his shoe. In 2021, he lost his foot on the hand. In 1492, Columbus lost his shoe. In 2021, one more leg. Big Saturday evening, Columbus lost his foot on the hand. Michael the Archangel almost bust a whole statue down. Where was the officer? He was nowhere. Was broke. He come up scratching the head and wondering what gone down. Both bang. Brown. Michael is a beast. Columbus leg and hand and pieces all over the ground. Y'all think Michael is played? Brown. Use a murderer? Brown. Old pedophile? Brown. Use a rapist? Brown. Old thief? Brown. Old liar? Brown. Off with your hand? Brown. Off with your leg.
Good morning. Good morning. It's so glad. I'm so happy to be back. I couldn't even wait for the intro music to quiet down. It's been a long holiday weekend, and I'm so happy to be back at Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. You are on the clock with Erin Greene on Tuesday, the 12th of October, 2021. And today is National Heroes Day, although we celebrate it on the second Monday of the morning. Well, let me start off the show by saying I have chosen my national hero. Now, mind you, I know that the government has a list of heroes in the paper today. I'm still not quite sure how this system works. I'm never sure if these are old honors or the new honors that we're giving out. But we honor them. We'll get more into that tomorrow. My choice for national hero this year is Vanessa Clark. Gospel artist Vanessa Clark is the recipient of the 2021 Praise Factor Awards International Trailblazer Award. The organization unanimously voted to bestow Clark with the honor, which is presented to an individual based outside of the U.S. who they say is trailblazing and setting above and beyond standards in spite of extreme challenges and hardships caused by extenuating circumstances. The Praise Factor Awards organization also decided that in seasons to come, the award will be named in honor of the Bahamian. It will be the Vanessa Clark International Trailblazer Award. A reason why I picked Vanessa Clark as my national hero is because Vanessa Clark has been plagued with a series of serious health issues, and she has just pushed through every single issue, every single situation the Lord puts in front of her. She pushed through like a soldier, like a champion, and even just recently is surviving a serious health incident. A few years ago, she had a health crisis that rendered her paralyzed, I think maybe temporarily, but you wouldn't know it because she continues to perform. She continues to celebrate the Lord. She continues to fellowship and worship with her community, and she continues to big up the Bahamas and represent the Bahamas wherever she goes and in everything that she does. And not just herself, but other artists as well. So, happy National Heroes Day, Vanessa Clark. Now, yesterday was also the International Day of the Girl Child, and it was National Coming Out Day. If you forgot, in the Bahamas, we celebrate LGBT Pride in October. And another very important day, and how, like they, fancy people like to say apropos, but the thing just fit. Yesterday was International Day of Indigenous Persons. International Day of Indigenous Persons. And on that note, I will not be talking about Christopher Columbus's statue today. Not really. Maybe just a little bit. I want you to watch the conversation. It's an important conversation. I can tell you it's an important conversation, but you're going to see how we're going to link it. Tomorrow, I am talking about the destruction of the Christopher Columbus statue. I got to do some more research. I got to pull in some more information. It's a fascinating, fascinating discussion. Once you get past the BGCSE and the BJC social studies papers, once you get past them, the conversation gets even more fascinating. But today, I want to talk about something different. Slightly different. Last week, we saw the premature release or leaking of suggested new press guidelines from the newly appointed press secretary, Mr. Clint Watson. And while the destruction of Christopher Columbus's statue is a very, very important discussion that we will continue, because we've been talking about that for a little while, this conversation, I think, is perhaps the most important conversation at the moment. I would almost go as far as to say I fear that what happened with Christopher Columbus's statue may be a distraction. See, we love distractions here in New Providence. It's not all of the Bahamas. Family Island people somehow have a different sense. But we love distractions here in New Providence. But this press thing, the new press guidelines, I think it warrants our attention. And so today, I have a guest, not in studio, but on the phone with me to discuss some of the issues that have been raised by not just the new press guidelines, but not the guidelines themselves, but the process within which the new press guidelines have been created. So I want to say good morning to my guest, Mr. Corville Pyfram. How are you? Good morning, Mr. Pyfram. You there? All right, you not there yet. Let me check. There we go. He'll be here in a second. So while we're waiting for him, I will just read this text quickly. The text says, great show as usual. Question, what will change by taking down Columbus's statue? The texter gives me the answer. The answer is nothing. The black community will still be killing each other. Cost of living will still be high. And these banks will still be raping us with hidden charges. Well, I mean, that's one answer. I don't think that's the correct answer. We're going to get into that more tomorrow with some experts, some amateur historians, and some guests. We're going to get into that. And maybe before the end of today's show. Good morning, Mr. Pyfram. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Erin. How are you? I'm doing quite well.
Good, good. And so I reached out to you for two reasons. Because you are like myself, well, not like myself, you're young like me, but you are a journalist that I have been familiar with for years, but just not necessarily in the mainstream media. And secondarily, you were one of the only people I saw actually talking about this issue, the substantive, like the real issues, I think, as this story unfolded last week. And I just think it's the most important thing we have to discuss today. But I'll tell you sort of why I think so, just to get the conversation started. Ingram took over the country, the Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram took over the country in 1992. I was not old enough to vote in 92. I missed the cutoff by months, maybe. But I clearly remember during that first 10-year period, maybe moving into the second term, the development of what I like to call an informal no comment policy, where I realized that people weren't easy to release information, especially information I felt that should be easily accessible by the general public, right? Not something that you would have to write the Freedom of Information Act commissioner to get access to. And then we moved on to the PGC, or the Perry Christie administration, where the PM spoke plenty, and cabinet ministers had a lot to say, but what they said didn't amount to much. And then we transitioned into this Hubert Alexander Minnis administration that promised us governance, accountable, honest, and transparent government. But I'll argue, literally bashed the media, right? Like we had an instance where one of the PM's aides very aggressively pushed a reporter's hand, out of their way as they were rushing to a conference room. And so, we transitioned to that sort of space where the Prime Minister made it very clear, and other members of the administration made it very clear, that they were not interested in entertaining questions, from at all, and questions from the public were labeled political mischief, right, or coming from the opposition, and then thus not worthy of being entertained. And now I see us moving into what I call this, the new Philip Brave Davis administration, where we see the administration rewriting the rules of media engagement. And I'm going to say, without engaging the most important stakeholders in the equation, the citizen, right? And so that's why I feel like this is a conversation we have to have right now about the new press guidelines and how they have come about. What say you?
Well, I think, Erin, you summed it up perfectly, for us. I think that we all go back to a time post-1992, and even if you weren't around per se, we've heard the stories about what the relationship was with the press and the power structure then. And when the Ingram administration came around in 92, it was this idea of government in the sunshine, and people also saw what they considered an opening of the airwaves, and I think the beginnings to a better relationship, or at least a way to make the job of the press a bit easier, right? It opened doors for a lot of people, and I think there are, many of my media colleagues today, I think, really attach their existence in this profession to a lot to the Ingram administration and for what it did, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, the reality is, and I don't think this is just something that is unique to our country. I don't expect there to be this love fest with the press and the government, nor should it be, right? But at the same time, I don't think that we want a situation where the press is just being used to sound like football, or to just kick around as you will,
Now, I argue that it should be a love fest with the press.
Well, I think that there should be a good working relationship. There's obvious, there's mutual understanding, and the fact is that where the government is doing right, the press is there to point that out. But also, when you get it wrong, it's also the press's job to do that as well.
Absolutely. From my perspective, like when I say it should be a love fest, right? I'm thinking for a country with a small population but a large global profile, right? And with a civil service that is while it's large, it needs to be tightened, right? There are too many people in the civil service. So with such a small population, we should be functioning with a tighter and a smaller civil service. The government should be courting the media, understanding the need to disseminate information quickly and clearly to further its own agenda and agendas, like legislative agenda, like economic platform projects. The media is a tool, a vital tool that the government cannot do without. And I would argue that the government should be courting them, or at the very least should invest a whole lot more money, should increase the budget exponentially of both BCB and BIS.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there, but also though, what are the returns from that though, like, or the expectations from that?
Well, for me, what I found is that the one of the biggest I would say one of the biggest elements or factors that play into the lack of success of successive administrations is their inability to clearly disseminate what it is they're doing, what their goal is, and what they've actually achieved at the end of the day. I think that governments are destroyed not by their lack of good deeds, but by their inability to convey what it is they've actually done to the people. And that's because they're not using the press and the press mechanisms they have available to them effectively, because they've created an adversarial relationship or dynamic with the press.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I think that's a fair point, that bad PR has been one of the downfalls of successive governments here.
You mean absolutely, and so, as opposed, while I'm looking at the new press guidelines, I'm thinking to myself, if these guys had actually engaged stakeholders, and not just the media, right? Because we sort of see the media as the immediate stakeholder in this discussion,
right?
But we don't see the media as having a function, like they're serving the public. The media's function is to serve the public. So ultimately, you're not answering to the media, you're answering to the public, who the media serves.
And I think this is, this is really at the crux of this conversation right there, is that, the media are just the placeholders for the public who does not have that day-to-day access or to this power structure. Yeah, because a lot of people, okay, as an advocate, as an ordinary person, I'm concerned about the new guidelines because they only speak to the media engaging. So as an advocate or an ordinary person who is a stakeholder in a particular space, then I can't get access to you unless it is advantageous or it's worth, unless the media is interested in what I'm interested in. And I was hoping to see articulation of another space, or the inclusion in this space for those other elements. But if I get sort of back to the point with BIS, there's a lot of information that people want access to that they wouldn't have to go to a cabinet minister for, if that information was being disseminated through BIS via the Public Broadcasting Corporation or Bahamas, Broadcast Corporation, or through the WhatsApp and social media channels. And there are those, there that would tell you that, in a lot of cases, the information is put out there, So I don't want to sit here on this interview with you and suggest that folks, in the office of the Prime Minister and the press office there aren't doing their jobs. I mean, but I think there are ways, and it's just the way in which they went about with this particular situation is just a bit concerning for me, because whether we like it or not, perception matters. And, I don't know. I just did not like the way in which this was done, and I think the fact that later there was a statement of clarification to put out, it says it like, it's okay that you guys got it wrong.
Yeah. For me, I don't like how it's done because it suggests that this is another instance where you're blaming the media and you blaming the public for what is ultimately your dysfunction.
Right.
If your media mechanisms were working properly, then people wouldn't be bombarding ministers and the prime minister. If the communications culture, policy, and strategy were different within the service and within government, then people wouldn't be for decades now chasing after cabinet ministers for information, right?
And one thing too, I would say, I want people to give the press in this country some credit here in the fact that typically they report exactly verbatim what it is that the ministers let out their mouths. And so I think this should have started internally with you going around and saying to the ministers, hey, here are my suggestions for you all in relation to how you may want to deal with the press.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel it should have, is the way that this should have happened. But I think starting this off and to know that this is among the first order of business that you're trying to do is to whip the press in shape or whip the media in shape, I don't know. It just does not sit well with me. And I don't imagine it sits well with a lot of people. It just doesn't. It doesn't pass the smell test. It just does not feel right.
Well, and I got a text, and we're going to take a break in a minute. But for me, another big thing is this. I'm going to be very plain here. I don't feel like this administration or the previous administration, right, and this government understanding that governments are successive, that even though an administration may switch, the government never changes, right? That I don't feel like this gang of professionals have the moral authority to just up and change the press rules, without engaging the largest stakeholder, which is the citizen, about the state's communications policy. But B, I think that there are questions that have to be answered, right? And if I wrote it down so I didn't suck my teeth or cuss while I was saying it, right? But what are the questions that have to be answered before the government and this particular administration can, quote, create a new paradigm for engagement with cabinet ministers and senior politicians? For instance, we still need an answer to Oban. We still need an answer to the three birds and the one goat. We still need an answer to why somebody thought that was an appropriate response. I accepted the response because I knew that there would be a formal report, right? Submitted, tabled, disseminated to the public, explaining in detail, right, what three birds and one goat meant anecdotally. I still waiting on a report from the BPL fire in 2018. I still want to know who the acting station manager was on duty when the fire occurred. We still want to know not just what the pending results of the investigation were, but what the state did or intends to do with those found guilty or liable or culpable. Right? There are just so many questions that remain unanswered. We still don't have answers to the questions raised from the oil spill in Marathon from the previous PLP administration. And we could go on and we could go on with questions that have not been answered. And I think it's unfair for a new administration to jump up and say that we have new rules defining how you can engage the PM and the PM and cabinet ministers without having addressed these basic. We still have the questions to put to the House from the Auditor General for $250 million that Bahamian taxpayers will pay for. Not politicians alone. So while we were sitting here getting a pay cut, people were getting pay cuts. People couldn't go to work, even if they had a viable means to generate money. Politicians sat in the House with no pay cut, refused to answer questions, and some of them are going to try and attempt to rely on cabinet secrecy. Right? They're gonna try and rely on these rules that ultimately protect them while we are faced with questions that we have to pay for. And I think that alone warrants a larger conversation, a pause to the discussion. I'm expecting a formal statement from the press club. I expect the press club to engage the wider public, right? About how they feel about this moving forward. Again, it feels like the citizen has been relegated to the side of another process of governance.
Absolutely.
And so, it for me, it raised some questions like who controls the public airwaves, who decides which questions can be asked, and which questions will be answered.
And I also think, because again, I agree with everything that you just pointed out, and I hope that people would move away too, with attaching personalities and personal feelings toward members of the press, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, this is so much bigger than hurt feelings, right? This is not about are they just mad because rules are being laid out for them? No, it's not that. There is more at place, and so where are the voices that you would expect to hear from? The academics, the Christian Council. I think there are so many other voices that ought to be a part of this discussion.
Absolutely.
This goes beyond media personnel.
Exactly. And to me, what it suggests is that people have seen the problem, the lack of access, right?
Yes.
The lack of proximity that the citizen has to those that ultimately make the decisions. But as opposed to lobbying on the ground, people have been machinating and strategizing to create closer proximity for their special interest group, right? Versus saying, hey, we the people deserve access like all the rest of the people.
And I should also have said, too, that this goes beyond your personal politics as well. This is not that, I'm mad at the PLP or I feel this way about the F&M. I mean, this is just one of those unifying issues where voices ought to be heard, Erin.
Absolutely. Listen, I got a caller on the line. Let's go to this caller, and I think we got to take a break, and then I got some text coming in. Hey, good morning, caller. You're on the clock.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How you doing?
Good morning to your guest. I just want to say that the press themselves has touchy feelings. The press themselves sometimes present themselves as in a biased way too. Mm-hmm. It's not all good with the press.
I hear you.
Because yes, and also they would hullabaloo in writing and everything about certain persons, and it could be the same pattern, but they show biasness against different ministers. Mm-hmm. And if they like you as a PM, whenever they refer back to that particular PM, even though that PM may have its faults and get voted out, it's always positive.
I got you.
But if they refer to other PMs, because the press can also destroy you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the press has a lot of power.
And twist things around to make it worse, make the particular PM who they don't favor in a light that will really destroy that particular PM. I understand what you all are saying with the press, but we are a small country, and God knows our press have extreme biasness sometimes. Well, and the public themselves, that you always talk about, we the people.
Yeah.
They point it out.
The people point out the bias.
Yes, the people point out the bias because you can see it. They do it in your face. And even editorials. Especially chief editorials.
I hear you. Thank you.
And then I just want to say, you start off with the transition. You spoke about the press in reference to Linden, Hubert Ingram, and all of that. But I know it is just your opinion. All right? So everybody don't share. I mean, your guests may agree, but everybody out here don't share that.
Okay, well, tell me which part you didn't agree with. I'm sorry, I miss you. Now, on the terms of media bias, right? You could imagine you're a reporter and you've been researching something and you have a whole bunch of, or even like a little journalist or a little social media advocate like myself, and you've been researching something and you have a whole lot of information that you know is true, but you can't you can't say on the airwaves because you cannot present the proof at the same time that you said the proof necessary for court. But you know. See, when I get in a situation like that and I know there are certain things I can't say, what I do to make sure that I'm not being biased is I go and I drive all the way out to the end of Frank Watson Boulevard. And I sit down there and I have a picnic and I eat my feelings. But Frank Watson Boulevard is the best place to eat your feelings. To reflect on things seen and unseen, and that can be said and cannot be said. But that's why sometimes, I just want to throw that in, sometimes media sound like they bias because they really want to look at some of these politicians and say to them, I cannot believe that you got up in front of all of these people and said what you said, given what all of us know.
And Erin, listen, I don't disagree with the caller, and not for a minute to say that there is not. We all have biases. It's just the way that it is. But I think in what she was saying, she also helped to make the point as well. We've got to look at this place, at the culture of this place. It is a small place. Many of us, for whatever reason, are related or just have ties to people, or either schools with people, and so these are closer connections than we realize.
And so I keep saying, in a small place, you cannot avoid conflicts of interest. You have to have mechanisms to manage conflicts of interest. And in the same way, we need mechanisms to, manage the truth and the facts. We need to figure out what mechanisms that we're going to use to help or to enable the public to balance the information that they're getting from multiple sources. And I think this conversation is even more important given the sudden passing of two giants in the media world, no matter how we feel about them personally.
Right, exactly.
Or professionally, we understand the function that their media entities provided, and then we understand the responsibility that we had to employ when using them, or any media house, right? So, I'm not saying, you got to be careful when you're reading those other journalists, but we know that as right-thinking people, you still have to measure all of the information you receive.
Right.
And so the passing of Ivan Johnson and the closing of the Punch and the passing of Gorman Bannister and the uncertainty of the future of his publication, The Black Belt, I see you callers, I'm coming to you in a second. We're sitting in this situation where we have these sort of new press guidelines restricting access to the PM and cabinet minister at a time where we're in a state of emergency and there are specific restrictions to the dissemination and publishing of quote-unquote fake news. And then we have the passing of the owner of the Punch and the owner of the Black Belt, right? I think these are not just interesting times, but these are dangerous times. But Corvell, I got two callers on the line.
Go ahead.
Let's go to the callers and then we can get back to that point. Caller, you're on the clock.
Yes, good morning to all.
Good morning.
Yeah, I said it was that regulated the press. So if a press secretary, who really should be the spokesperson for whoever employed him, whether it's just the prime minister or the press secretary of the cabinet, and to him to say that, well, you can't ask a cabinet minister a question on his way to work, or even at his house, or in the street. Man, that's unacceptable.
Right,
and he's a man who thrived on that. That's how he survived as a journalist.
Yes, and where's the line drawn between an MP and a cabinet minister?
Right. He's not Urkel. Is he the press secretary for the cabinet of the Bahamas, or the cabinet of the Bahamas, or just the prime minister? The press need to be sticking mics in his way. He needs to be a priest. He's supposed to know the prime minister better than he knows his wife.
Man, listen,
he's supposed to know his views on every issue.
Thank you. I gotta go. Just how you said that, I realized what happened to Minutes. Every time y'all was pushing these boom sticks and these mics in his face, they look like fishing lines. He wanted to go fishing on the moon, and y'all was just messing with his feelings, getting him excited and then letting him down. But Corvell, that's my music coming in the background. We're gonna take a short break, and when we get back, we also gonna touch on something that he said, because I just realized, if you have, was 32 minus 7, if you have all of them people in the House, in a parliamentary secretary or minister of state, then who can answer questions on the fly? Look like everybody have to apply for a press briefing anyway. Caller, we got to go to a break. We'll get to your call when we get back. Stay tuned to Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. You're on the clock with Erin Greene.
I've been representing all my life. I'm getting ready to make it count this time. Since it's 2021 for your family line, you better get ready. It's about that time. So tell mama to be ready. Tell it to the whole family. The rock the top for two. The count depends on you. So tell Ted to go tell below. Lock it down on your calendar. Since it's 2021, this one's for everyone.
Have you heard about the COVID vaccine raffle? If you are vaccinated against COVID-19, you can enter to win amazing prizes like food store gift certificates, hotel stays, beach excursions, and so much more. Even if you are previously vaccinated, you can still enter to win. The COVID vax free, safe, and protects you from severe COVID-19 infections. Don't delay. Get vaccinated today and enter to win. Visit www.vaxbahamas.com to register.
Like what you're hearing on the show? Want to support the conversation? Sponsor On the Clock today. Call Janet Lees at 302-2304. That's 302-2304. Be the solution. Sponsor On the Clock with Erin Greene, where she dissects, we discuss, and you decide.
The Central Bank of the Bahamas invites students in grades 4 through 12 to compete in the Get Money Smart Bahamas video essay competition. Students must produce a 3 to 5 minute essay sharing their views on the following topic. The Bahamian economy is an ideal model for digital financial services. Get a parent or guardian permission to share the link to your essay with us on social media and have your entry judged for cash prizes in either the primary school division, junior high, or senior high school category. Essay submissions must be received by October 22nd, 2021. For more information, visit getmoneysmartbahamas.com or see our post on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I've been representing all my life. I'm getting ready to make it count this time. Since it's 2021 for your family line, you better get ready. It's about that time. So tell mama to be ready. Tell it to the whole family. The rock the top for two. The count depends on you. So tell Ted to go tell below. Lock it down on your calendar. Since it's 2021, this one's for everyone.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Good morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. You are on the clock with Erin Greene on this Tuesday, the 12th of October, 2021. And my guest today is Mr. Corville Pyfrom, local journalist. And I wanna call him a social justice advocate, but that's just me. That ain't him. I just feel that the way that he interrogates issues that arise suggests that he has a level of empathy that you see usually in social justice advocates. But don't let me curse you like that. How do you define yourself, sir? Mr. Pyfrom, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I know that there's some feedback happening here. No, I would simply say just as a concerned citizen.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see things, and there are a lot of things just happening, and Erin, it's because I think, like you spend time around a lot of people, and it becomes quite amazing when you come to realize just the things that people are thinking about. There was a time when I thought about certain things only mattered to certain people, but these discussions are happening just all around this place. That these things do stand out to people, and or it may appear different, but as you get more into the discussion with it, you realize how similar these things happen. The ripple effect of it all.
And listen, and it's something you said, that these conversations are happening all over the place, right? Successive governments like to suggest that the Bahamian people are apathetic and they don't want to participate. They don't want to talk about the important issues. They're not thinking about them. But the truth is, Bahamians are A, thinking about them, and B, talking about them. Here's where the problem lies. Because the people are just doing their thing. They talk in the way they talk. They engage in the way they engage.
Right.
The government acts as if it is our job to write the dissertation explaining to the government how we feel about every single thing, and clearly lay it out to them and tell them exactly what we expect them to do for us step by step. And if we don't do that, then that says that we will accept anything they decide to do, right? And that's absolute madness. Because first of all, it's impossible for your citizens to be able to function like that.
And there's a trend that exists too, Erin, where these successive governments seem to overlook. You're not being voted in.
Right.
People are being kicked out.
Right. So this presumption of a moral authority to lead and make decisions no longer flies.
Right. We have not received a political party probably since 1997. Where we said, hey, we like the job you're doing and we want to stick with you.
Here's a sort of connection I want to make before I go to this caller. The government sits there and says, well, you didn't say anything to me, so I went ahead and acted. The government fails to acknowledge that it is their job to find out from us what we want. To take it from us in the raw form, to delineate it, to distill it, to correlate it, to put it together, and then come back to us and say, this what you mean? I think this is what you mean. I like this. Can we go forward with this? Why this is important, I come to you right now, caller, is because in reference, I want them to know, I'm making the connection to tomorrow's show. Philip Brave Davis said in reference to what happened with the Columbus statue, we'll decide what we're going to do going forward. Now, if you paid attention to what the gentleman was saying when he was out there, he's basically saying the government ain't listening to me and ain't listening to us, so I gonna do what I gotta do. And here we are with Brave the very next day coming off a little tone deaf, like, hey, well, the decision is ours as the government to make, and, y'all voted us in. But the point you make is so important. We didn't vote you in. They got voted out, and you were just the first runner-up. But
exactly.
Let me get to this caller. Caller, you're on the clock. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Good morning, Erin, and your guest.
Good morning.
Now, we always put the cart before the horse. A reporter is a reporter. They read the news and ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to find a good PR person? You study mass communications, publicists. They know how to answer questions. The reporter don't answer the question. But the last reporter, the last PR person was a mess. Reporters don't do PR work. We need to get more. There's a lady at COB. She worked at NBC in the States. She was good. You know what she is found? She'll make it a press secretary because she studied mass communication.
Yeah.
If I Google what is mass communication and what is a reporter, they two different fields altogether.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, caller. I got to move on. And that's a great point you make. It's obvious that they don't have a mass communications expert. You know, I know they have a special interest communication expert. They know how to talk to specific groups of people, but it don't seem like they know how to talk to the public generally. Corvell, I got a question for you. Does this make Clint Watson the new information czar? And like the caller just pointed out, is this a problem? Right? Is this a problem? Is his job to answer questions, or is it his job to control the and create, control, and deploy the strategy for dissemination of information?
Well, I mean, it's a little of both, isn't it? We'd be kidding ourselves. I mean, you work for you work for the government, which is itself a political arm, and so he's there to represent its interest and get its message out, and to somehow pretend as though that's not the case. I mean, we'd be kidding ourselves. Is he the information czar? He's the Davis administration's information czar.
Right. And for me, I'm wondering, is this problematic that this goes to a contractual appointee, right? Like this isn't a civil servant, this isn't an elected position. This is a administration's appointee, a contractual appointee. I think that the questions need to be asked. I'm not sure where the answer is, but these are, this is one of the instances where the question has to be asked. What provisions are in place to protect the public and their right to access to government information? I just think it's a sticky situation. But listen, I got some texts here. We're almost out of time. I got some texts here for you and for us. First text says, but Erin, what inhibits the press in participating in press briefings in this new system? Press briefings is just one medium of providing and disseminating information. Well, so cabinet briefings, I have it here, the scheduled briefings. So cabinet briefings would be on a Tuesday. OPM briefings would be on a Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. And we're not certain, well, it says the PM will appear monthly if there's a national crisis or unless otherwise indicated. So it's a couple of things here about the press participating in the briefings. That's okay, so we get to participate in the briefings. What if all of the questions can't be accommodated in the briefings? Does
Exactly.
that I'm out of luck?
Right, and I said 2 reporters, 2 questions each. Or like, what's going to happen with this? I don't know. I just
right. What if cabinet ministers are being combative and say that they don't, I don't like they like to do sometimes, and you end up with a non-answer? Or what if after the 3rd cabinet briefing, the minister comes again saying, "Oh, I was expecting that question, but I still don't have the data for you." Just because you're allowed to go to a press briefing doesn't mean that it's going to be fruitful or sufficient. Anyway, let me get to another text. A text here says, Ms. Greene, I heard you list off a number of questions we rightfully need answered to. So because we don't have the answer to list of questions, are you saying not to improve the system? And by the way, with the improvement, doesn't this pave the way for answers to your questions? I don't know. First of all, I don't know if this improves the system. Like, when you say that, it's sort of a misnomer. First of all, there was no system in place. There was no formal space for this to happen. And so the staff had to run after them. But like, here's another thing. Do I want the briefing before the cabinet meeting, or do I want the briefing after the cabinet meeting? Another text, great show as usual. It's human nature to have bias. We as parents even have bias with our kids. No, I'm not saying it's right, but it is what it is. Arlington, this text is for you for tomorrow's show. We got to play Columbus Lied by Mighty Shadow. And another text, mass media's mass deception equals mass psychosis of the masses. Boy, we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well when we ask the question, what is Columbus doing here? Because that's just another person in my country that can't vote, don't have to pay taxes, and still have more rights than I have. Caller, I'm sorry we couldn't get to you. Mr. Pyfram, we have to continue this conversation.
Listen, Erin, I'm just so happy that for one, we had this discussion this morning, and whether people agree or disagree, the fact is that I'm just glad that they're talking about it, and that it's because it is a conversation worth having, and it has to be an ongoing one.
Right.
So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most important conversations. And as I entertain callers who keep telling me, man, Miss Greene, you guys share the mic, you guys share the airtime, I see that element as a part of this larger discussion where people feel that they are being marginalized from participating in the processes that grow and govern a country. And it's our job as the media to open up those spaces and share them when we get access to them. And when I say the media, I don't mean a formal journalist. I mean people like me who's come on the radio to slap up every day and bring you some jokes, some smart talk, and some fresh news. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Pyfram.
Thank you, Erin.
Absolutely. Thank you to my producer, Arlington. Thank you to my guests and callers. Last text of the day is the press conference streamed live. See, that's another important question. Thank you so much, texter. Glad that I took it, but I gotta go. It's 11 a.m. and that means Levon Miller and Unleash is up next. Have a great day, Bahamas.
In 1492, Columbus lost his shoe. In 2021, he lost his foot on the hand. In 1492, Columbus lost his shoe. In 2021, one more leg. Big Saturday, then Columbus lost his foot on the hand.